Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. The D-Day that Comrade Blessed Geza had been promising has finally been announced. Everybody is being called to go out on the street on the 31st of March. Here is what he had to say on the matter.
Straight 1 March. Straight 1 March. Ndi comrade bombshell vari kutaura comrade Geza. Tiri kuburisai kuti munhu wose kubva kuplum tree. In fact, haizi demonstration, tinoiti izvo uprising. Munhu wese ngaapinde mustreet. Munhu wese ngaapinde mustreet. Right? Tiri kuda kuti Mnangagwa, Emerson Mnangagwa, Spy Mnangagwa, ainde nezvigananda zvake straight 1 March. Kune avo vari kwanisa kubatsira nematransport, mabhazi, magonyeti, makombi. Please batsirai, ndimwi maona nhamo nokusechwa mumarodhi umu. Toda kuti muite mabhizinesi enyu under environment iri user friendly, yokuti gonyeti rako rinobva kwaMutare kusvika kuBed Bridge. Drive asina mboti ndatorwa mari nemapurisa. Ndo zvatoda kuti zviite. Saka budai mese musapote straight 1 March. Toda kuti vanhu vaende. Right? Kuma law enforcement agencies. Shatinokumbira Mutamba. Mpana yemutamba iwe wakanditumira vafana vekuhomeside nema-AK 4 masquad kuti vandiuraye ini. Mhosva yangu ndei? Mhosva yekuti ndinoda kutaura kuti iwewe nemapurisa ako mugare zvakanaka. Ndewo monditsvagira nema-AK ini Mutamba. Kwana wazviwa? Kwana. Ndati Mutamba kwana. Saka apa ndiri kutaura kuti hatidi kunzwa kuti pane demonstrator arohwa, pana demonstrator akuvara. Because let me warn you guys, it's a wave, it is unstoppable. Saka kana musikaoni zvinhu on the ground, yeti mune chance yokupuwa intelligence nevakomana venyu vepeace kupusa kwenyu. Jere richakupinzai hamuri buda ana Mutamba. Mark my words.
Ben, what do you think?
Good day to you and good day to everybody. Thank you for joining us. The much awaited signal finally arrived. And, let's get to the nitty gritty. I've been following the social media comments on different platforms about this, this press conference. And I must say, people are heavily, divided. Some are for, some are calling, Geza the hero, the leader that they want, and so forth. Others are very, very skeptical, and they can see a repeat of the 2017 coup. Sorry. So this is what the social media is reporting actually. I kind of feel this was what we expected from the very beginning, that people are going to be called to go to the streets and demonstrate, and and so forth, with really not much to go with in terms of you know what is in it for the people. It's still the same narrative. We want Chiwenga. Chiwenga must be protected. Chiwenga is the right candidate. And this would be the second time that the war veterans have decided for Zimbabweans what is right and what is wrong. And judging from their previous, 2017 coup, they're the ones that were the architects of it. They made a big mistake. They brought in Mnangagwa, and now they want to do the same thing. And people are very, very much, skeptical about the whole thing.
Well, let's look at it point by point. This so-called uprising, I think it's clear that it's being backed by the army. And I think Geza is emphasizing that point by showing up in his army uniform. And in that respect, it is really no different from the 2017. The 2017 coup was backed by the army. That is clear. The second point here is, as Geza himself has explained on a number of occasions, and in fact in this video, he goes to town to defend the VP Chiwenga. It's no secret that Geza and company want Mnangagwa to take over. Sorry, want Chiwenga to take over. So in that regard, it is no different from the 2017 coup. The army was behind it, and they wanted Mnangagwa to take over. The people had no say in it, because if people had a say in it, they would have never accepted Mnangagwa, because they knew who Mnangagwa is. Mnangagwa is just a dictator, no different from Mugabe, whom they were replacing him with. But that's what the army wanted. And the same applies now. Geza is urging people to come out in the street in support of this latest coup. And he's going to replace Mnangagwa with Chiwenga. Nothing has changed here. And I think it is absurd that some people are so naive and gullible to think that this time it'll be different. It's not any more different than it was in 2017. This is a repeat. And why people should support something that is bringing no change to them. This is just one faction taking advantage of the people suffering and pretending that they, if they get into power, they will ease that suffering. Why didn't they do so before? Chiwenga is right now the VP. He has been vice president ever since the 2017 military coup. What change did he bring? Just as Mnangagwa was part of the Mugabe regime since 1980. And yet, all of a sudden, in 2017, he wants to divorce himself from Mugabe as if he has never known him, as he launches the so-called Second Republic. When everyone could see that all that has changed here is we've just changed one dictator for another. We have got to stop this madness. This is not bringing up any change at all. Benjamin.
I agree with you there because, I mean, let's look at it. All the press conferences that Comrade Geza has come out and spoken, he has never spoken anything about, reforms, anything about the will of the people, the fundamental rights of people of Zimbabwe, which is the right to choose who governs the country or who governs their estate, which is Zimbabwe. None of that has been mentioned. Every time the war veterans have had a hand in the power struggle, they have had their own nomination and they have gone ahead and imposed that person. And you are right to say this is no different from 1980. This is no different from 2017, and it's not going to be any different this time around. They've already had their candidate in place, and whatever other talks they are saying are happening in the background. The main man is Chiwenga. Period. You can choose whatever from any other, but the main man, the one that is going to be in the driver's seat for them, is their candidate, and that is VP Chiwenga. So at the end of the day, this is why people are heavily divided to say, we can smell 2017 all over again. To those that are switched on, they can see there is something wrong when somebody imposes, a candidate and then declares that candidate as as if they're the rightful heir, if I may use the word. Chiwenga is the rightful heir to the throne. Zimbabwe does not operate like that. Zimbabwe is supposed to be a democratic country. Everybody's got one vote, an equal share in who says, governs the country going forward. So I agree with you there 100% to say, we should be able to see behind this whole mask. This is Zanu PF fighting amongst themselves and going ahead and using the people as a shield to further their own ambitions.
One of the things I find really annoying about Geza's own statements about Chiwenga and some of the people in the social media is how they are trying now to portray Chiwenga as is anything other than a Zanu PF thug. Here is an individual who was in the liberation war, like so many other Zanu PF leaders. And after independence, he has played his role in the imposition of the Zanu PF one-party dictatorship. It's no secret that Chiwenga was involved in the Kukurawundi, like so many other soldiers. He was also involved in the so-called Joint Operations Command. By then, he was one of the top brass leaders. And during Operation Mafotera Papi of 2008, the army was involved in some of the terrible things that happened during that period. And to pretend that he was not involved is being naive, because he, like all other top brass in the army, were rewarded by Mugabe for their help in Operation Mafotera Papi in denying power to the opposition and restoring Zanu PF's rule. He was involved in the 2017 military coup. Let's dismiss all this nonsense about it was a military assisted transition. It was a military coup, and there was nothing constitutional about it. If they had failed, he and his coup plotters would have been thrown in jail in Chikurubi or worse, because there is nothing in the constitution that allows a military coup. Let's get that one very clear. And it wasn't a military coup to restore the rule of law in Zimbabwe. It was for the sake of power. Because as part of his reward for his involvement in the coup, he wanted the position of VP. Rumor has it that he negotiated with Mnangagwa that Mnangagwa should save the 2 terms and hand over power to him. And this whole Geza revolution is in pursuit of that. He has waited for his turn to get into State House. And Geza and company are helping him. And no doubt some still in the army are helping him to achieve that goal. This has nothing to do with ending the people's suffering, with getting a competent government in power. And I think those who try to pretend that Chiwenga is anything other than just another Zanu PF thug, they are insulting every thinking Zimbabwean out there. So the bottom line is, as much as you are calling people to come out in the street for this uprising on the 31st of March, you have not explained and convinced the nation that this is not a rerun of 2017 coup, in which you just replace one dictator with another. The people of Zimbabwe, they do not want dictatorship. They do not want to try a third dictator now. They want an end to the dictatorship. And that point must be said and made abundantly clear. And personally, I urge Zimbabweans to sit back and consider this carefully. Stop being used and abused by these Zanu PF factions. This is a factional war that will not change the people's lives, because it is seeking only to replace one dictator with another. And what the people want is to dismantle the dictatorship. So let's be clear on what we want and demand it, and stop being used to justify, because make no mistake about it, if this so-called uprising is successful, Chiwenga will come in and he will believe he has got legitimacy, and he will point out to the people who would have come out on the 31st of March as proof of their support of his uprising. And he would want to serve at least 10 years as president. Another 10 years of this dictatorship is a nightmare that any thinking Zimbabweans should not be supporting. That is my message to the people of Zimbabwe today. Ben, do you want to give your closing remarks?
Yes, but before we close, I think there's one important matter that I think we should raise here, and I'm going to pose you a question to say, during the interview, Comrade Geza, I think he got people excited by mentioning that he had spoken to the likes of Chamisa, BT, and let's just say the opposition, and the opposition are in support of this whole mission, if I may say. What are your thoughts, and what is your advice to Zimbabweans out there that are excited of the prospect that their opposition leaders have been mentioned to be part of this operation?
Well, that is a good point. And in this particular case, it must be addressed. It is true that many opposition leaders would participate and would support this so-called uprising, just as they supported the 2017 military coup. And we know what happened then. Chris Mnangagwa, he was one of the leaders of that military coup, assured Tsvangirai and company that post the coup, there will be a new GNU. Morgan Tsvangirai discharged himself from his South Africa hospital bed in a huff, singing "The Good Times Are Back Again." The 2008 to 2013 GNU had accomplished nothing. It failed to implement even one token reform because Mugabe bribed Morgan Tsvangirai and company with the trappings of high office. We've said that on this platform countless times. And we'll say it again because it is true. Tsvangirai and company supported the coup because all they saw was the good times coming back. They didn't care about reforms. If they failed to implement even one token reform during the GNU of 2008 to 2013, which was backed by SADC, it is naive to think that they were going to achieve the same thing in a GNU in which Zanu PF holds all the trump cards. I've heard it said that this Geza and company have promised the opposition a new GNU. And you can tell that the attraction is equally tempting for them. As for their supporters, and I believe most of the people who will come out on the 31st of March would be opposition supporters. It has always been easy to con this Chamisa Chete Chete brigade, as we have seen again and again and again. They only need to be told that this is the real thing. This time this will bring change, and they will believe it. That is the problem we have with the opposition supporters. They were conned to support the 2017 military coup, and they will be conned to support this so-called Geza 31st March uprising out of sheer naivety as before. That would be my reply to that one, Ben.
Thank you. I think you did justice to it. So in conclusion, I would want to say, yes, it is true that corruption is rampant in Zimbabwe. Yes, it is true that there is high unemployment. Yes, it is true that, whoever is actually employed is getting peanuts at the end of the day. That is true. Those things need to be addressed. But also, we need to address the fact that Zimbabwe is a dictatorship, and we need to find democracy. And that is one aspect that Comrade Geza has failed to talk about, dismantling the dictatorship, which is within ZANU, and he belongs to ZANU, as he says. So for me, I think this is, where I pause and say, what is in it for the people? Moving after, we got to look after the coup. We replace Mnangagwa and we put Chiwenga. Then what? We know that this is what Zanu PF is all about. We know the DNA of Zanu PF. They will hold on to power. Nothing will change. So I think, this is one fight that, we need to look, listen, and learn from. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. I totally agree, and I would really like to re-emphasize that point. Zanu PF are renowned whenever they want the people to support them. They all of a sudden remember the people suffering. And they go to town about ending the people suffering. But as soon as they get what they want, they forget the people again. We are in this sorry state. Zimbabwe is a failed state because Zanu PF have let the people down. That is the truth. Zanu PF have become like the hyena, which when it found itself caught in a trap, convinced the goat that it is now a vegetarian to get the goat to help it out of the trap. And as soon as it was free, feasted on the goat. I think the people must be smart enough not to keep falling for the same dirty trick again and again and again. Geza and company have made no secret of the fact that they want to replace Mnangagwa with Chiwenga for the sake of power, because they believe it is Chiwenga's turn to rule. Nothing whatsoever to do with people suffering. But of course, they've only exploited that reality to justify asking the people to come out and help them. I'll just conclude by playing a short clip of Geza talking about what this is really all about.
Aiwaga. Mirani kutauri imwe zvinhu zvinoitika. Hani ndiri kutokutaurira. Kurauza kuti handina kupusaka because ndiri kutokutaurira kuti tozviziva. You know, takapusaka ndisikakutauriri zvese. We'll deal with this situation at the appropriate time. But ndiri kutotaura kuti commander Mnangagwa, right? Chiwenga, and right? Ngawa dissolve political bureau. Tikwane is, but it's true. Ngawa dissolve cabinet. You know, Zinana Kazembe, Vana Soda, Vadan, how much you talk about Nikupaniwa? Vanakamba Vanan, you know, why do you hate your comrades? You know, kunema general, kunema retired CIO wakawanda, kunema retired commissioners of police and other senior officers wakawanda. Haladiwe.
Maybe the president is looking at capacity and capability.
Bullshit. When I'm grade 7, I know capacity and capability. Grade 7. You know, what a beast you're going. Now I was Minister of State, Mangwana Provincial Minister. It's terrible. It's terrible. We are not apologetic about it. Children do it. Turn out of Pinga, not out of the president, one was motor, one about you don't have a podcast.
But you've got your own cars. You've got a hotel at your house that you built in Sanyat. Why do you want all this?
I want to be rewarded as well. Not to be used like a political condom all the time. I'm not a political condom. And Urkoda Wanama here, Vaya, Navama.
Well, I've said it on this platform and I'll say it again. One of the biggest problems that Zimbabwe has had is that when we waged the war of liberation, the war of independence, we should have also posed the question, what kind of leaders would an armed struggle throw up? Would those be the kind of leaders we will want to lead the country? I think Zimbabwe has had the answers to those two rhetorical questions. We have had a dictatorship for the last 45 years. The regime has had nothing to do with advancing the freedom, liberty, justice for all Zimbabweans. It has promoted the greed of the individuals. And that is why we are here. This uprising on the 31st of March will have nothing to do with addressing that fundamental problem, but everything to do with which faction of the Zanu PF dictatorship rules. Make no mistake about it. Both factions of Zanu PF, they can fight among themselves about who is going to rule. But make no mistake about it. They both are committed to keeping the Zanu PF dictatorship. Chunu chao. And I think we, the ordinary people, should take note of that and make it abundantly clear that as much as they were in the forefront in the war of liberation, of independence, the people of Zimbabwe, the ordinary people of Zimbabwe, have as well a right to a meaningful say in the governance of the country. That is the only way out of this mess. Everything else is just a waste of time. My last word, this so-called Geza uprising has nothing to do with the ordinary Zimbabwean, because it is not going to end suffering of the ordinary people. It will just settle who is the next dictator. Is it Mnangagwa or is it Chiwenga? How anyone can pretend that that has got a bearing on their own ordinary person's lives beggars belief. Thank you very much, Benjamin. And those of you who were able to join us this evening, thank you very much. Hope you'll be able to do it again. 6 o'clock UK time, 8 o'clock Zimbabwean time. Have a good night.